Hello everybody and welcome back to another discussion video. This is another one I've been kind of wanting to make because I have known quite a few people who have told me quite a few things about the industry that I probably shouldn't know, but I know it anyways because they just tell me the stuff basically. So there's a few things I want to talk about, just sort of how the industry works and that sort of thing. So the first thing I want to talk about is quality and just overall companies themselves. Now, every company, has their ups and their downs. One thing that often happens is there's a company, for a while it was Feiss and Quoizel and let's see, I'd say Minka and Kichler, and right now I would say Hinckley is on the top of the industry. All these companies, they're on the top, right? So, they're building up, they're building up, they're building up. They reach their fine point, okay? And fine points we'll use Kichler as an example because I have enough stuff to actually show you for them. This here is a 2009 Canfield model. Now, this fan is, for a builder, it is really durable. It's really decent. And then we have this 2019, this is just a motor shell for it, but this is part of a Chiera from like 2019 or 2020, and it's much lighter weight. You could play frisbee with this thing. Yeah, the blades do not feel nearly as nice and heavy duty, and overall just the quality is not nearly as good. And I'm gonna put this back also because I don't feel like tipping it off and scratching it. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make here is that once a company reaches the top of their game, once they are as good as they can be, and once again, just cleaning up other messes from other videos here. But anyways, yeah, once they get to the top, they basically try to figure out, how can we make this cheaper, okay? Now that we're on the top, now that we're making the money, these people realized, oh yeah, we're the good company. They see our name, they're like, oh, it's gotta be good. It's like Hunter. That people see the Hunter name, they're like, ooh, that's a good brand. See, I know this. I see them everywhere. Well, they're not. They suck. And once they start to cheapen, and that's when problems start to occur. And this is one piece of information I'm not 100% sure if I should be mentioning, but hey, no names are disclosed besides Kichler. And once again, we're talking about Kichler, but this is, I actually just left a reply just before making this video about this same thing. And that is that Kichler, when they started, they were really good. They had a couple defectives every like 200 fans, which is, it's okay. Nothing is ever perfect. Stuff slips by all the time. Nobody's perfect, right? Or nobody's nerfect. Well, yeah, Kichler's definitely not, because over the years, well, this place, they were really big Kichler dealer. They were huge in Kichler. Most of the stuff they sold was Kichler. And then, eventually, that stopped happening, okay? And this stopped happening because defectives became more of a thing. Maybe all of a sudden from 1 in 200, 1 in 100, 1 in 50, 1 in 25, until eventually it actually moved down to 1 in 3 fans being defective. Lighting, well, lighting's not as, okay, well, in terms of, maybe not in terms of design, but in terms of function, lighting is not as complex. That is why a lot of the lighting manufacturing has moved over to India, where ceiling fans are staying more in like China and Taiwan, because they know how to make the fans that we're doing. Now, India does make fans, okay? I'm not saying they don't, because they do, but they make fans for India. India makes Indian fans, like they make the fans that they sell there, India actually has a couple brands that make some really neat stuff, actually, by the way. But yeah, they do things different, whereas in like China and Taiwan or wherever they're making crap these days, they are used to making our fans because they have done for 30, 40 years now. Quite a long time, almost 50 years. They've been making fans. Of course, the amount of companies that have been making fans there has definitely gone up recently. Well, really, ever since the start, it's been going up and up and up and up. And now nothing is really made in America, I don't think. Well, I think that the Matthews Gerber fans are. I think those might be made in America. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot of stuff that's actually made here. Anyways, so yeah, they these companies, like I said, they cheap it up, And now the point that I was eventually going to get to was that they didn't really take returns either. They didn't necessarily stand by all of the products. If it wasn't for the once again, if it wasn't for the sales rep that these people were working with, they wouldn't have been able to get them returned at all. But luckily, though, that did end up working out, because otherwise it would not have been good. They would have lost tons of money. So eventually, you know, they quit selling a lot of Kichler. And nowadays, Kichler quality just isn't as good as it used to be. And I would say that around 2016, 17, you know, that's when they were still decent, but eventually they got worse. 2020, that year, obviously, you know, we were working with the pandemic. But at the very start, though, that year just had us very disappointed. The introductions were lacking, and it took them a couple of years to really get back to what we liked from them. But still, we are not sure on the quality, and we still don't think it's very good, unfortunately. But yeah, companies will oftentimes do this. And one other thing I want to touch on when it comes to companies these days is tons of companies are getting into the ceiling fan industry. One of the biggest ones I think that I could talk about is most likely Maxim. Now, if you take also I think I'll mention or talk about Design House, because I have a feeling they're dealing with the same thing, where they are not sole ceiling fan manufacturers. Maxim is really good with lighting. Like, their lighting is awesome, and the people who work there, like the CEO's kids actually work there. They don't just sit on their ass and do nothing. No, they know so much about their products, because some of my friends at the showrooms actually met the owner's kids, and like, they knew what they were doing, okay? And the quality is great, and on the ceiling fans, it's still pretty decent. But here's the deal: they do not make ceiling fans; they make light fixtures. So, like I said before, ceiling fans can be a little bit more complicated. They've got actual motors in them. So now they're paying to bring them in from somewhere else, and because they're not a sole ceiling fan manufacturer, that price goes up, and now you're paying like $200 for just a basic ceiling fan, where you could get for cheaper from a company that focuses more on ceiling fans. Does that mean they're bad? No, it just means that for the price you're paying, it's not always worth it. And Design House is by far my best example of that. Everyone's familiar with those really stupid 6-blade white mushroom glass huggers. Well, Design House, I believe, sells one for, okay, I might be wrong with the prices, but it's like $80, okay? Or it could be in the hundreds. It's either around $80 or like $160, somewhere in between there. Either way, anything past like $40 is getting to be a little bit too much. Those fans are cheap. They're the cheapest of the cheap, and it's not even a designer product. It's not like you're spending $500 on a small fan like the Kichler Turno, which I've got. That is a designer fan that's meant to look cool, and it's actually built, well, obviously we've talked about Kichler already, but back when that fan was new, what you were paying for, you got, it was a good fan. And same with the Canfield. That was a more basic fan, but the little Canfields were pretty good. All the Canfields were, actually, for a time. They were amazing, and the designs are good, the quality was good, airflow was pretty good too, but when it comes to these little fans, they're just little pieces of junk, and you're paying so much for them, and that's just not really my thing. And one other thing I want to mention before we end this video is something that could maybe deserve its own video, but I tried it once and it just wasn't too long, so I'm just going to throw it at the end of this video instead. And that is a lot of those weird sort of importing manufacturers, like Paraduncle, River of Goods, and let's see, there are some other ones. I don't know them all off the top of my head. I guess you could kind of say Caro, even though Caro's starting to do their own thing, so not Caro, but like River of Goods, and also, what was the other one I mentioned? Paraduncle. I have worked with both of these brands, and they're not actually as bad as they seem, okay? I've worked with River of Goods at a local showroom who actually sells them, because some brick and mortar stores are actually selling them now. River of Goods is local here to Minnesota, so that's why that whole thing is going on. And Paraduncle, I got a fan for cheap at a salvage store. I thought it looked Australian to me. It's the little Dreyer fan. I don't know where it is. Oh wait, yes I do. It's right here. Yeah, it's pretty lightweight. But this fan here, it's a 42 or 44 inch fan, one of the two. This little fan hauls. It is by far one of my best small fans. Well, of course, now that I've got the wrap, I can't say it's one of the best anymore. But this fan is actually decent. Build quality, you know, it's not the worst, you know. Okay, it's not great, but it's not the worst. This is one of the smallest motors, and yet this fan hauls. And the light is bright too. And on the River of Goods, low speed feels a lot like a medium speed for average fans. They're just really, really well made, actually. Now, in terms of the designs, I can't always say I'm the biggest fan. So many of them just seem like the same concept, just with a bit of a different lighting design. But of course, people, well, you got to remember that people don't always want ceiling fans just for ceiling fans, but also for lights and sort of the decorations that the lights add to the fan. But yeah, overall, I feel that while a lot of people probably rip on them, they're not as bad as you think. If you know somebody who says, "Hey, I like that design," okay, and you know you're a vintage person, you like the older fans, or you like the really high quality new stuff. If they're on a budget, don't turn them away from those brands. They're not actually that bad. And another example is Prominence Home. Once again, not that bad. You know, I got one of their cheapest offerings for even cheaper. I got it for $3, but you know, it was cheap. Yet still, the build quality wasn't all that horrible. I feel like they definitely get knocked a little bit more than they should. And because you're paying less for them, if the fan craps out a little bit earlier, which it most likely will, it's not the biggest deal per se, because obviously, keep in mind, it's not just the quality you get right out of the box, it's how the fan is in 10 years or 15 years. You've got to also think about that. You don't just want to put some up and be happy with it. Oh no, it died, now you're screwed. And that's another thing with like a lot of the LED modules, and why people don't like them is because they don't want to have to replace them. Of course, now LED modules are becoming more replaceable, but that also is a lot of work. That would be a topic for another day, which I honestly probably don't even have enough experience to go fully into, so I'm probably not going to. But yeah, the point is that these import brands aren't necessarily the worst. Do I necessarily like that that's what's becoming really popular in the industry? Not particularly. I am still a showroom guy. I like a lot of the showroom brands the best. But from what I've seen, they're not the worst, okay? They're definitely not the worst, which does make me happy to know that. But of course, it is also very sad to know that a lot of the really cool vintage fans are being thrown out for these newer ones, when the older ones are just way cooler. But of course, people don't know that. You know, they don't understand usually. But yeah, I do feel like that's about most of what I want to talk about here in terms of how the industry is. And I'm sure there's tons more stuff, but you know, I just got done recording the video talking about like I believe it was where I think the future is headed. But this is the right now. This is what I'm noticing right now. And it's definitely not the worst, but it's definitely not the greatest. There's definitely room for improvement. So hopefully we'll be seeing that in the future. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.